Final Fantasy XVI is, so far, one of my favorite games to have come out this year. It takes a series that has been around for decades and changes up some of the largest and most fundamental parts of the series. And I mean this in terms of both the storytelling, the lore, the gameplay, the mechanics, and even the themes that are presented in the game. And personally, I'm a huge fan of change. It allows for games to grow, evolve, and refine the different ideas that they have over time. And I think there's a lot of really good things to say about Final Fantasy XVI. And so I have prepared for you today 5 of my favorite things that Final Fantasy XVI does. And I do want to preface this all by stating that I know there's a lot of, I don't want to say controversy surrounding the different things in Final Fantasy XVI, but I know there's definitely a lot of mixed emotions based on what types of changes they made in the series. To start things off, I want to talk about the combat in Final Fantasy XVI. I absolutely love the combat in this game. Final Fantasy XVI decides to fully embrace an action-focused style of gameplay as opposed to some of the preceding titles that focused more on role-playing elements, even turn-based elements. Honestly, if you've ever played Devil May Cry, Bayonetta, even Dark Souls, or honestly, really any action game that has come out in the last 10 years, you're going to feel right at home with this game. That is, as long as you actually like those types of games. But, I mean, the controls, they are tight and responsive. Enemy moves are telegraphed incredibly well. And to top all of this off, the game gives you a lot of special equipment that you can use to kind of enhance certain aspects of the game, or even give yourself a bit of a handicap if there's an aspect of the game that you're struggling with. For example, let's say you're struggling to pull off effective and efficient combos in the game. There is an accessory that you can equip that basically allows all of the combos in the game to just happen automatically. All you have to do is press the square button. If you're forgetting to pop potions at the correct times and you're dying a lot in boss fights or even just regular encounters, there's an accessory that you can equip that allows Clive to just use them automatically. There's accessories that allow certain parts of the game to become automated, such as these, but if you're not necessarily struggling with the gameplay in the game, but instead would rather enhance the gameplay, you can choose to equip different accessories that maybe make certain abilities of yours stronger, or even give you new moves, or enhance different combos that you can pull off in the game. Me personally, one of my favorite accessories to equip was an accessory that turned a simple dodge counter attack into a dodge counter attack combo. There's plenty of different things for you to play with. I'll touch a little later on some of the things that I think that maybe the combat could have done to make it even better than what it is, but I did just want to, start things off on a really high note and just compliment how awesome and epic the gameplay is in this game. Going even beyond combat, another part of this game that I absolutely love is the story. I mean, the story in this game is absolutely fantastic. And I mean, don't get me wrong, Final Fantasy, for the most part, looking at you, Final Fantasy 15, has always had an engaging and interesting story. However, I think 16 really shines, in particular, in its delivery of the story. The game essentially throws you right in the middle of the events that are taking place without really bothering to explain who anyone is, where we are, why we should care or not care about, different characters, different conflicts that are taking place, so on and so forth. And what this immediately does, and it becomes immediately apparent, is it makes for some really natural sounding dialogue that doesn't break the flow of cutscenes or stifle the pacing of the story. I mean, this isn't Kingdom Hearts where every 5 minutes Sora, Donald, and Goofy are introducing themselves to a new character to where they're like, I'm Sora, I'm Donald, and I'm Goofy. No, none of that happens here. So, on that note though, I mean, how does the story give context then? Well, that would be through Final Fantasy XVI's active time lore system. The way it works is basically at any point during a cutscene, you can pause the game, and it's going to allow you to select on little bubbles that will further explain the characters in the scene, maybe the land that's around the characters, certain essential plot points that are talked about or introduced during the cutscene, and honestly, even more that I really not even actively thinking of at this point because there's just so much to dive into. But on top of this, as the story progresses and new information comes to light, the active time lore is going to change too. I mean, there is a heavy emphasis on active. There is also a character that you can speak to who's going to keep track of all of the lore in the game, and you can read what he's gathered at just about any point in time in the game. And so I think this highlights two really cool things that you're going to see take place in the game. First of all, as the story progresses and it develops, the lore that you're going to read about during cutscenes or even when speaking to this one specific character, it's going to change and update over time. And you can actually view the preceding descriptions that the game provided for you and see how they develop over time, just to kind of see how much you actually have learned. The one, I don't even want to call it a downside because I personally didn't care about this. I actually liked it. Is the fact that since a lot of the context is provided in these little blurbs for you to read through, you probably are going to spend a bit of time reading in the beginning of the game just so you can really fully understand what's going on. Me personally, I don't mind diving into some reading, especially if it's as interesting and intentional and engaging as what the reading is in this game, and it's definitely worth the effort. But if you don't like reading, definitely something to keep in mind. It might not be your cup of tea. To tag along with the game's, main story or main method of storytelling, I also really want to highlight the game's method of passive storytelling, or rather environmental storytelling. It's incredibly impressive. So, as the story and the conflicts develop in the game, the world that you're exploring in is going to change too. And sometimes this is through how a part of the world looks. What was once a colorful place that is full of life may become gray and devoid of any life later on. Even the different things that NPCs will talk about at certain times is almost always going to be contextual and based entirely upon what major events unfolded previously in the game. And if you want even more context as to why certain things are the way they are or how it's impacting the world around you, the side quests in this game do a great job of offering more of an explanation. In fact, I can't think of a single side quest that I completed where I walked away going, well, what was the point of that? They all provided me with a deeper appreciation of the world around me. And from a lore perspective, this is really fun to dive into. Personally, I never want to spend time completing a quest in the game just to find out that it was a waste of time, and me personally, I never fully felt that any of the quests in this game wasted my time. I either got more of an understanding of the game, the story, the world, the characters around me, or I got a major reward such as a new weapon, piece of equipment, or even some other things that I don't necessarily want to spoil at this point. But I do want to highlight too, maybe you're not the person or the type of person that wants to do every single side quest in the game, especially if you're not really getting a great tangible reward. Final Fantasy XVI's actually got you covered in that department, because when you're looking on your map at the different side quest icons that are going to pop up on there, some of them will have a plus mark next to them. And if there's a plus mark next to it, that means that that side quest in particular is going to give you a greater reward than usual. So if you just wanted to focus on that, that's perfectly fine. If you want to do everything that the game has to offer, every single little quest that becomes available over time, you're definitely not going to feel like your time was wasted. At least I personally didn't feel that way at all. Now, I started things off by talking about the gameplay in this game and just how awesome it was. And I want to talk a little bit more about that. In particular, my fourth point I want to make here, which is the hunts in this game. There is going to come a point in this game where you're going to be able to hunt down strong monsters for great rewards. And so normally this concept wouldn't really be anything new. I mean, Final Fantasy 15 had a whole hunt system where you just picked a monster, went out and killed it, came back and collected your reward. But 16's execution of their hunts is unique enough to make it stand out. For starters, the game doesn't specifically tell you where a specific hunt is located. I mean, you're going to be given information as to what region of the world it's in, where it was last spotted, what it looks like, but you're not going to get a quest marker. On top of this, the S-ranked hunts, which are the hardest in the game, are even more ambiguous as to where to find them. And what this does is it makes tracking them down actually feel like a hunt as opposed to just a simple fetch quest. You know, you're actually hunting them down. You're not just given the immediate answer of where to go right off the bat. And this caused me to kind of feel like a bit of a detective at times, where I was really having to kind of uncover where some of these monsters are. And I also really loved how many of the hunts that become accessible to you, they become accessible while you're under leveled. And don't get me wrong, Final Fantasy 16 is by no means a hard game to play, but when you're 9 levels below a monster and just taking 2 hits from that monster is enough to kill you, and any damage that you deal to it basically seems like it's just tickling the monster, that's when my Dark Souls intuition starts to kick in. Suddenly, I'm paying extra close attention to the enemy's patterns and their counters, learning what moves are best to dodge versus parry, and like what abilities and combos I should use at certain moments in the fight, and using my brain in this way, trying to figure out when I can be greedy versus when I should be playing defensively. For me personally, that's always a good time. I love being challenged in this way. And I mean, honestly, I'm a sucker for trying to overcome impossible odds. So if you personally are a fan of making a game more challenging or making certain parts of a game more challenging to keep you engaged, I think the hunts are going to be a major highlight for you as well, same as they did for me. The final point I want to talk about with Final Fantasy 16 is probably one of their more controversial parts of the game, or actually, I don't know if controversial is the right word, maybe more just mixed feelings. There's a lot of disagreement here with whether this is actually good or bad, and that would be the boss fights in this game. Now, me personally, I loved the boss fights. They were challenging at just the right moments, and they became absolute spectacles that made my jaw just drop to the floor. And I found myself audibly and physically reacting to some of the cutscenes at times. And honestly, outside of playing horror games, I personally don't find myself experiencing such exciting responses from my body when playing games. But I don't know. I mean, yes. To the opposition's point, the boss fights in this game, they have quick time events, they have long cutscenes that kind of break up the action here and there, but here's why I personally don't think this is a problem. Final Fantasy XVI uses these quick time events and grand cutscenes as a tool, in particular a transitional tool. In past action games, I mean, you'll fight a boss, you'll get their health bar down to 0, and then the screen blacks out, and then you play a cutscene, or, you know, if this is Elden Ring, the character disappears and dies, says one last line of dialogue, and then that's it. Or you get a boss down to 0 health, and then a cutscene plays that just brings the second phase of the boss fight in, fully restores all the health of the boss, and now boom, you're in phase 2. Not much of a transition. Final Fantasy XVI, on the other hand, you might get a boss down to half health, and then suddenly you're doing quick time events, and those quick time events are indicating to you, hey, this battle is about to make a drastic change. Something big is about to happen, and you're rewarded with these grand cutscenes that are basically just eye candy for you to look at and watch. And it's a great reward for you getting past a boss, being able to watch something so cool, but it's also kind of a nice little mental break, especially if there's a boss that's giving you a little extra trouble than what it maybe normally would. So anyway, those are the 5 things that I loved most in Final Fantasy 16. There's definitely more I could talk about, but I wanted to kind of consolidate my list of praises into some different things that I thought were either maybe a bit more unique than what I've seen online, and also offer some of my more unique takes on what this game does. But anyway, feel free to let me know what you think down below. Definitely tune in next time. The next major video I'm going to be working on is going to be the top 5 things that I hate about Final Fantasy 16, or rather the top 5 things that I feel like they could improve upon or missed the mark on. But definitely let me know what you think down below in the comments. If you enjoyed the video, feel free to leave a like, definitely comment, and feel free to subscribe. But otherwise, take care. I will see you later.